Everyone. Yeah, it just hit 12 o'clock. So good to see all of you here on a Saturday, being Saturday teachers. And so in the chat, I have placed the link for today's session. It is on a platform called Skylearn. When you click on the link, you can easily sign up with Google. If you are on an iPad, then it will ask you to download the app. Or you could just follow along and then respond in the chat as we move along, and then access the link after. Omar, did you press record? I didn't know if we were recording. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so once you're on the Skylearn, then there is a doc that's there. If you go ahead and fill that out, and then afterwards I will also send the link to you, so that way you can access it. I'm just trying to see how many people we have in. So we have 8 students who are in thus far. Okay, and while you're filling out the form, today we're here to just talk about Hyperdocs history and primary sources. So if you like double click on the card as it appears, you'll see like as I move along, like stuff will start to appear, and they're called little cards. Then you can double click on them to see them up close. And then if you hover towards the top, then you can press cancel to then make it go back, so that way you're back at the board. So again, I double click on the card, it brings it forth so I can see it closer. If I hover towards the top, then I could go ahead and click cancel, and then it takes me back to see the board as a whole. So my name is Leticia Citizen. I am an I4 coach at Hawthorne School in Beverly Hills Unified School District. This is my 3rd year in that district and in that position. And so our 4 I's that we focus on are innovation, inspiration, instruction, and individualization. And prior to that, I was in the classroom for 18 years, and I try to keep up with all of it. So I taught 2 years kinder, 7 years 1st grade, and then 9 years 5th grade. For 16 years, I taught in Pasadena Unified School District, and then the next 2 years I taught in Arcadia. And then I was finally, I was actually invited to come and apply for the position of I4 coach for Beverly Hills when I was presenting at ISTE in Chicago in 2018, seems so long ago. But you'll also see that I am an ambassador and a trainer for many platforms that I feel that are really engaging our students, and that they listen to teacher voice as well as student voice about like making changes. So things like Nearpod and Hyperdoc, and I'm an MIE expert. So I do, take it very seriously about like using these platforms and how they do revolutionize my teaching, as well as helping my teachers as well. All right, so the first part that we're going to ask you to go ahead and answer this question is explain your exposure to Hyperdocs. So to respond, you'll just click on the blue plus sign, you'll click enter text, and then you can go ahead and type in your response. And so just share or explain like your exposure to Hyperdocs. And if you're unable to join our session, then you can go ahead and use the chat to place it there. Welcome to those that are just now joining us. The link to the presentation is in the chat. We have one person who said they've made an account and haven't tried anything yet with Hyperdocs. So we got a newbie. Anyone else? Let's see. I've heard about them on educational podcasts. I attended a training this summer. I just created my first. Congratulations, Kristen. I'm looking for more examples of use. Awesome. And then Susan said, prepping a Hyperdoc Cody for QVC. Congratulations to you. Any other responses from anyone? Wait time is always tough. So then we have another response that says they linked up a Hyperdoc blog. Thank you for that. And then Skylearn but cannot interact. What do I need to do? So does Mrs. Dane, if you can unmute yourself, are you like seeing the same cards that we're seeing on the screen?
I'm seeing, yeah, across the page, and I can see the Hyperdoc question,
And then
but it wasn't allowing me to do anything.
Do you see the blue plus sign underneath it?
Okay, there. Maybe. Okay, so then I would choose annotate, I guess.
No, you're going to choose enter text.
Oh, enter text. Okay, got it. Okay.
You're welcome. All right, so while I can hear that Mrs. Dane is typing her response, I'm going to bring up a new card. So we have this image that's here. I'm going to make it bigger. And then underneath, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and take a look at this image and then share what you notice and what you wonder about this image. Make it bigger for you to see. Just type, what do you notice and what do you wonder? Or if you want to unmute yourself and share there, that's fine too. So we've got one notice that the boat turns, there's one boat turns into several. Absolutely. You see a shift in how many are there. Anyone want to unmute themselves or maybe share that way or in the chat? Any other notices or wonders? So someone asked, do the boat colors represent anything? Good question. Does anyone think, like anyone care to answer that one? Do you think that the boat colors represent anything? I've always looked at it as more of that there's a shift from the boat on the left-hand side being gray, right? Because there's just like one person in charge. But then when we shift over to the right side, making our transformation using Hyperdocs, then like it becomes more colorful because like there's more input and we're allowing the students to use their voice and their choice. Someone else noticed that that you can create groups. I would like to see an example. Teacher leads and students are along on the right in the first, and then there's a transformation of students steering their own boats. Someone shared in the chat that there's a change in mindset. So that is definitely also. And then there's a question, how do you get kids to a place to steer for themselves without taking over? Absolutely, especially when they're in their groups, right? Like how do we allow that to happen? Thank you for all of those questions and those wonders. And so here's like a breakdown that was shared a lot online, this image of what a hyperdoc is versus what a hyperdoc is not, right? And so people often say, oh, it's just a doc with links. And I really like to point out to people that like one of the key pieces, and they say right here in the blue, is that it allows students for reflection, right? And that it really allows students to show what they know. And so it's taking them through this process. And I tell people, like, one of the key points is one, yes, that they either get to reflect individually or that you do it as an entire class. If they're working in groups, they get to reflect on like what part they played and then what part that their classmates played. And not so much to put down what someone is doing, but more so about like recognizing the positives, right? And really having them to understand that we're not here to point out someone's faults, but more so of looking at it as here's how we operate as a group, and here's what we need to do as a group in order to get better. The other thing too is really, I feel like a key point in Hyperdocs is really allowing students to choose how they want to express their learning, right? So they have this time to like gather information. Now they need to do something with that and really allowing them choice. Now, when I suggest when you first start off, yes, I like to set it up so that way I'm choosing the way that I want students to express their learning, just to give them time to like one, be comfortable even with doing hyperdocs. But I found that when I first introduced it to students, it's a different way of them learning and a different way of expressing what they've learned. They're used to typically taking a test or just writing a page, 5-page paragraph or whatever that is. And now we're asking them to do something a little bit different. And then on top of that, they, the first time I tried it with like, hey, choose how you're gonna do it. Kids are like, wait, what? What are my options? So like taking them through, I feel like that first couple of times of like setting up how they're gonna express their learning and then slowly releasing the reins within, I usually find by like the 4th or 5th time that we're doing a hyperdoc that now they get to choose how they're gonna do so. And then the other part of that is like not only creating something to show what you learn, but then the other piece of that is really about like sharing it in a space where others can see it. And so that way they're not just creating for the teacher, but they know that they're going to share with an audience in mind. So if that is their classmates, then they can go ahead and share that. And not only are they sharing, but they're soliciting feedback. And so in my class, we did something what was called purposeful feedback, where the students would have to start off by giving a compliment. And we talked about like being very specific about that compliment, not just saying, oh, this was cool, but really saying like, hey, I really love, your word choice because it helps me to pick a picture in my head, whatever that looks like for them. So they would start off with a compliment, then they would make a personal connection to what they read. And then the last part was to ask a question that like can't be answered by what you just read or what you just viewed or what you just thought, whatever that creation is. And so really having an opportunity for students to get feedback from an audience and then being able to respond back to them. And so allowing that time for students to do that is really important for that sharing piece. In my class, when I taught 5th grade, we Skyped with at least one classroom in the 50 states. And so that became part of their audience. And so after we would Skype with the class, then I would have a conversation with the teacher about like, hey, going forward, do you mind if we share like projects with your students to get feedback, or like sharing, what lessons we're doing in order to get feedback from your class, which then helped my students that when they were creating, they would come and say, who's my audience today, Ms. Citizen? And I would say, well, who do you want it to be? And then they would say, oh, maybe that 2nd grade class in Ohio. All right, so then we would have that conversation about what does that look like? What does that mean? If you know that your audience are 2nd graders who are anywhere from 6 to 8 years old, what are you gonna have to do as an author in order to convey your information that you learned to them? And so really having those deep-rooted conversations, and it really shifts how invested they are in owning what they're creating because they know that others are gonna see it. So again, not only consuming information, but having a space and a choice of where I'm going to create this sharing it in a space that gets me feedback, and then lastly, having that reflection piece. Any questions about any of that? All right, so I've also attached here a doc that like is a Hyperdoc template, and this is like a generalized one where you have the engage, explore, explain, apply, share, reflect, and extend. I always try to advise people to not, your first time around, for you and for your students, to not do all 7 pieces. I always suggest to start off with 3. So maybe you're just like engaging them, and then they get to explain it, and then they apply it. Or maybe they explore something, they like have a way to apply it, and then they share it. Like, only start off with 3 the first couple of times, because one, for you yourself, especially if you're starting off for the first time, like, it's overwhelming, all this stuff, because you have to like know where to get your resources. And I always like to start off with a question. What is my question that I want my students to explore? And then I think about like, how long do I want this unit to go? Am I going to do something where once a week they're completing this Hyperdoc and it's like answering our essential question? Like, those are the conversations that I like to have with myself, and that I like to talk over with like my thought partners, to go through and see, okay, what am I going to do with this? But I always suggest that people start off with 3 initially, one not only for you, but also for the students. Again, we're asking them to do something different, where they're used to like reading a passage and then, answering questions. Or the other part of it too, like by the time they get to me in 5th grade, they wanted me to give them all the answers. And I was like, yeah, that's not what I'm here to do, buddy. But we are in this together, and you're going to do some exploration. And so then you start to like shift, and once like you develop a groove with it and the students do too, then you can start to add and take away, and then add more pieces. The other thing too is, it doesn't necessarily have to go in this order, number 1. And number 2, like, you could have like an engage, explore, engage, explore. Like, there's different ways. So again, what I would say, always start off with what's the purpose, right? And then be very specific about what is it that you want your students to go through. What are you hoping that they get from the information? And then allowing in that space to share. A lot of times you'll find that like they'll end up sharing learning that like you didn't even see, but again, because you allowed that space to happen, then and then it's always helpful for them. That way it guides like my next steps that I'm going to do. Any questions about that one? Anyone care to like add to it? Anything that they want to say with it? It's all like I'm not a head nodding, but all right. So then the next piece is there is a website, thanks to the they call them the Hyperdoc girls, or it's called Hyperdoc women, that they have, and that's linked there, where they do have a website where they house like templates, so that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So there are about 12 different samples that are here, that like you can take that basic template. And here's the other thing too, like, it has all the pieces, you can take them away and you can add more, you can do whatever. I mean, you all know a template is a template, but it's there for you to use. This is where I've always started. When I first started to do Hyperdocs, I would come here and take the templates and just use them and like fix them to meet my needs, and fix them to meet my students' needs. But that's there as a free source for you to access. And so you can take a look at that. And then I've also, so I'm going to do this now. I'm just going to open them all up. I've also, so most of those are just on docs. I like to switch it up. So I've always found that like after maybe, I don't know, like maybe the 5th or 6th one, I like to switch up how I'm, or where, or what platform I'm using to house my Hyperdoc. Okay, so as you can go through and see, so it's all open now. So you've got your Google Doc one, and I've also placed an example of one. So this is a lesson plan. So for those of you that are history teachers, K through 12, doesn't matter, okay, and even for admin, if you're not familiar with the Gilderlerman, I'm going to put it in the chat, gilderlerman.org, and then with the NEH.gov. So both of those places, they actually host week-long teacher institutes in the summer. So this past summer, of course, because of where we are in the season of our lives, they did everything virtually, which was really nice, and they did it for a longer period of time. But typically what happens is they have these week-long institutes that are free for teachers. They really want to invest in teachers and really invest in like us learning how to bring history to life for our students. And so what happens is the way it's typically set up is there's a topic. So this lesson that you're looking at is when it was at Rhodes College in Memphis, Tennessee, and it was on civil rights. And I forgot what the specific topic was, but you actually stay on campus. So I stayed at Rhodes College, and during the day, the first half of the day, we had like lectures. So we had professors who would like come in and talk on different topics that they had set up, this whole lesson plan. And then the second half of the day, we would actually go out into the city and visit those those places that connect us to what we were learning. At Rhodes College, they actually had a partnership with the Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Hotel where Dr. King was killed or assassinated. And so we spent like the second half of the day there, and then we would go out into the city and they bring in like guest speakers to like talk about those landmarks and talk about those spaces and what historical significance they have. And so you're allowed to like take pictures and really engage with what's going on. And then your commitment of being there for the weekend and paying for everything and paying for your food and staying on campus is that then you have to create a lesson at the end. And so you're working on that as well during that week, that you're like taking the information that you're learning, you're coming up with your own essential question, and then you're creating a lesson. And so mine was history or happening, a change is gonna come. And so what I did was I created a 4-week unit, but each week it was a different Hyperdoc. So that's all linked there for you to see. But like, and this is where like the historical and the primary sources comes in. So, you know, I would have my question, I would have my standard that's there. And again, I like took a template that I found on that website. And so to start off, my students were listening and watching the song, and it was the song by Sam Cooke.
Verizon knows how to build unlimited right. Start with America's most awarded network. Include the best in entertainment and offer plans to mix and match starting at $35. Plus, get the Samsung Galaxy S25G UW on us when you buy any Note 25G. Only at Verizon.
Thank you, Verizon. So it was Sam Cooke's song, "A Change Is Gonna Come," and the lyrics are there too. So the first time around, I tell my students to jot down their like immediate reactions, and they had to do it on their classroom blog. Okay, and then they also had to read the responses by the classmates and then write post a comment. And then the next time around, they had to listen again and listen to the song. And then this time around, they were going to the Getty to find an image that they felt depicts the meaning of the song. And then they had to upload it to our Padlet and explain why. So they were going to come here, post that image, and then explain using evidence from the image, like why did they think like this would depict what was happening in the song. And then this time, and then the next time around when they're exploring, they were going to make a copy and read the lyrics themselves. And with that copy that they make, they were going to use blue font and annotate the document answering what did the author assume. So I really love the 3 big questions. I don't know if you all are familiar with Kylie Beers and Bob Probst, but they're really big on like the 3 essential questions for annotation for closed reading. And so their first big question is, what did the author assume? And this is really good because it allows the student to say, I didn't know this, because as you all know, students don't want to admit when they don't know something, especially in 5th grade. And so this was like an easy way where it's like, you get to take the responsibility off of you that you didn't know this information. You get to say the author assumed that you knew this information, right? And then they're going to explore again. And this time they were reading the lyrics again, and they were going to annotate using red font what surprised them, like what surprised you. And then they were going to find a partner to explain, read the article. So then there was an article that was here that they would explore, and it was about that song, A Change Is Gonna Come. And they had to like sit with their partner and discuss it. Okay, and then again, they were gonna go back to their lyrics, and now using green font, because now this article gave them more information about that song. And so now they're gonna go back to their document using green font, and they were gonna annotate what challenged, changed, or confirmed what they knew. Then they were going to add their name and link to this to a document that I had, that then once they put their link there, and it was a way for me to manage it. So that way I could like click on their link and then actually see their document. So I can see all their annotations. And so I'm looking at those things as they're going through their task. And then they get to apply. So now they're going to use those lyrics from the document, and they're going to use the information that they learned from the article, and they were going to work with a partner to write a 4 to 5 word phrase from the lyrics in the article to write a found poem. And then they were going to place it on a Google Doc, and then make sure to add, purposeful, like they're going to read each other's information and then share that together. And then at the end for their reflection, they were going to think about, because they looked at 3 sources. They heard the song, they read the lyrics, and then they read an article that talked about that information. And then they were using this Twitter feed that I like found online and then adjusted. And they were going to pretend that they were 2 different people talking about that information, expressing what they learned. So it's just a creative way. And I would tell them, I still stick with the 140 characters because I really want it to be precise. So they could only use 140 characters to talk about this document, pretending to be 2 different people talking about these 3 sources that they just explored with. But it's a form of reflection, and that they're making sure that it's tying back to this question of, is a change going to come, just based on that first thing. So then there's like, although it says day 2, it's actually week 2. And then the next week we would go on, and it would just build on what they're doing. And ultimately at the end for the 5th week, then they're going to do an opinion writing piece using all these sources that I've given them in the meantime. So that's like one way that I use it with Google Docs. I found that Bunce is also a great way. So that is also linked there for you to take a look at, where, this lesson was for one of the institutes that I went to in the week. So let me see, I've been to New York to do work on study on Hamilton. I've been to DC. I've been to Monticello to do a week-long institute. But they're really great to check out, and it's a great way to then it really allows you that time to sit with your content that you're teaching, and then connecting it to what you're learning from these institutes, while also creating these primary sources. In these Hyperdocs. So you've got Google Slides, using Skylearn, the platform that we're doing now. ThingLink is one. Padlet is another one that I like to use with my students to create a Hyperdoc, and they go through and they get to see each other's answers. Nearpod is a great platform to do it. And then also Wakelet, now that Wakelet is around, and I love using Wakelet as well with my students, but I'm out of the classroom now. I go into teachers' classroom, so I create lessons for them to use. But I found that Wakelet is a really great way to do it as well. So click on that, and that's all there for you to access. Link to that source, please. Which source, Susan? Where is Susan? It's over there. So you can see how it also works on the Wakelet, and how I just set it up that way. So do you guys have any ideas about what's other platform that you could use to house Hyperdocs? Anyone?
Leticia, I was going to ask if you can go through some of the icons on the top one, because I don't like, it doesn't have any words to it.
What, you mean this one?
Yeah.
Oh no, that was just to like, that was like my card holder.
Oh,
That's yeah. I just looked up like icons and just put it there, and these are the ones that you're focusing on. Sorry about that.
got it. Thanks.
Yeah, no. That's just, maybe I should change that picture then to look for these. But that was just to be there to just be like platform. Yeah, I don't even know what half of those things are. So, all right. Well, if nobody has any ideas about like other platforms that can also house Hyperdocs, then we can go ahead and take a look at where I find my primary sources to then use. So I'm going to open up all of those. So again, I've already spoken to you about the NEH and the Gilder Lehrman, and they also house a lot of primary sources, but you've got the Library of Congress. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have the Learning Lab, which is one, and these are all clickable for you to access. You've got Mount Vernon. They're constantly adding things to theirs. You've got Fordham University. You've got the Huntington Library. For those of you in California, I will say, like, if you've never been to Huntington, it's in San Marino. For those of you that are in Southern California, but they love working with teachers, and they have primary sources. They have a warehouse on like site that they haven't even opened, because like people are constantly sharing and like donating stuff to the Huntington that they find, and they haven't even gone through it. There's no way. And as of like maybe 3-4 years ago, they've started to upload a lot of the sources online for us to access, so that way they're digital. So they're always willing to work with teachers. I strongly advise you like reaching out to them when you're like looking for specific things to go with your lessons, that they're really helpful. And they love helping teachers, and like I said, they have tons of resources. They do have like a special library there that sometimes they will open up to teachers for you to access, and so they're great to partner with. And then the last one is Monticello is another one. So these are the places that I love to go to, and a lot of times when you go here, they already have them like broken down into topics. And then I just like, I have like folders on my drive, and I have folders on my computer that I just like put in the sources that I want and that I need, or like some that I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get like at some point I might need this one. And so I just like keep them. I just make sure that I, cite my sources like always, and that's what we teach our students. And then I also will like send my students to these sites as well. So they used to always have these bookmarks, because there was a lot of times where I would say like, go to the Library of Congress and like find 4 images that might support this theme or whatever, but allowing them, or I would say just find 4 primary sources. So if they wanted to include music or lyrics or diary entries or whatever that is, that they were allowed to go, and as long as they could use evidence to support what they were talking about, then we were all good, and it was like getting them into that practice. Does anyone have like any other place? Huntington Library is cool. They just put out a call. Ooh, yes, they had a huge Octavia Butler exhibit like a couple years ago, and because she wrote that in her will, like she actually contacted the Huntington Library like way before she passed away, and she told them how she wanted to like hand over like her manuscript, everything. They have everything, and then she wrote it in her will that like the Huntington Library to get everything. And so like their exhibit was just a small portion of what they had, but they also have teacher institutes that are free during the summer, and I think they're actually gonna, because of how everything has changed, that they're gonna do one during the school year too, or do a couple. And Octavia Butler's like on their list of things that they talk about, and like they bring out those sources to you to see, so they just when you take pictures, they tell you no flash, and you get to put on gloves and actually like touch on, and yeah, it's really cool. So again, Huntington Library is awesome. And yes, their Octavia Butler's information is phenomenal because she was like, I'm going to give it all to you guys, which I think is really cool. So does anyone else have like other places that they go to for their primary sources? Yeah, there's no problem. Okay, so then we'll move on. So earlier I referenced the Hyperdoc website that has the template. Now they are revamping their website currently, but they still have a place where you can go and actually click on these images here. And then it takes you to examples that teachers have submitted, all these Hyperdocs. And so you can actually like click on them, make your own copy, and then adjust them as you see fit. I always strongly advise people to always like make sure that you cite the original author to say like you were inspired by or that you got the idea from this person, and then make your adjustments. But that I've also linked on the Skylearn for you to access, and it's all there. But they are like completely revamping it, so I'm assuming it's going to be even more so, because the idea before their site was teachers give teachers, and the idea was like give one, take one. And I would always tell teachers who were just starting off, like, you can take as long as you can until you're ready to like give, and then make sure that you go back and like give yours, so that way other teachers can access them and see examples. So definitely check that out. This is where I would always come to, so that way I didn't first reinvent the wheel, but then it says page not found. Ooh, yes, I'll put it in the chat. Thank you for that. Wait, hold on. Okay, there it is. So you can go ahead and, but they definitely are like revamping the whole thing, so that way, I believe, so that way we can start like giving again and then also taking more. So that's there for you to access. Thank you for that, Kim. I like went through all the links this morning and still. So I wanted to give you time to like search through that site, see if you can find any Hyperdocs that would fit your needs, or if you have like questions for me, we can talk about that now. But I wanted to like give you time to explore all of that, and then I'm here to like answer any questions. So we can do that for, let's see, we go to the hour, right, Omar, or to 50? What do we do? Is Omar still there? Let me go to my calendar. Oh, all the way to 1. All right. So I can put it up to the timer to 15 minutes, and then we'll check back in, but I'll give you time.
Hi there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so essentially we do go until about 1, where we'll have a break until about 1:30 to be able to come back and continue our learning. So the session is being recorded. So essentially we're just kind of using this time as we'll continue to dive into the great content you've shared. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kristen said, I struggle with my district block and a lot of collaborative options. Really? Like what kind, Kristen?
I almost don't even know. Anything that's kind of like we can't do, I've heard we can't do Jamboard. I haven't actually tried it with the students. And we can't do breakout rooms unless we're in the breakout room with them. So, and a lot of cool things like Adobe Spark, I gotta wonder if that's even accessible. So I kind of am insecure about sharing any Hyperdoc when I'm limited in what I can have my kids do.
Right. Well, I would definitely say like don't let that stop. I mean, even if they're like using Google Docs and Google Slides, and you know, like if you know those tools actually work, I would say don't limit yourself and your students like using Hyperdocs because, like you said, you don't know what you're allowed to use. So I would say go with the ones you do use, right? And then over time, I don't know. Where are you? What district are you in? Oh, you're muted.
I'm in the Centralia School District. Until recently, we weren't even able to have YouTube. So any cool Hyperdocs, most links didn't work, you know, so
Right.
that changed though with distance learning. We really needed YouTube.
So now it's open because of, I'm curious to know when distance learning is done, if they'll go back to blocking it. That'll be interesting to see.
Hopefully not.
I'm hoping that a lot of things won't go back to the way it was. Because like we're seeing, I mean, I know it's still struggles and everywhere, but like we're also seeing some benefits to what's happening, and I'm hoping that we can go forth with that. But I would definitely say don't let that stop you. Like I said, use like the slides and the drawings, like still use those platforms, because it really does allow the kids to be creative. But I understand. Are you guys finding like any good lessons? Do you have any questions? I don't know, who was it that said that they're like creating something already? Kristen, you said you attended a training this summer and you created your first one. What did you create your first one on?
It is on ecosystems and food webs with that I shared with my partners who are both in combos. So I felt like let's give them something that they can use for their science time while in distance learning. And I think my students are enjoying it. We only just started. It's a lengthy one, but each week they have different parts too.
Okay. Awesome. Anyone else have tried? Kim, how about you? Have you tried creating one?
I have. I actually started with the Multimedia Tech set first as like introducing the topic. Okay. And then sometimes when I find myself explaining the difference between, you know, that Multimedia Tech set and the Hyperdoc, it gets so confusing. So the first one I tried was on
Hey guys, welcome to your first video lesson.
Sorry. I'm not muted, am I? There it is.
No, what were you saying, Kim?
Oh, it was on Famous Educators.
Famous Educators. Oh, wow. And like, what were some of the things that you had them do on the?
What was like some of the TED Talks, Rita Pearson, of course, how to watch that. Mm-hmm. Some reflection on observations they did in the classrooms that they, elementary classrooms that they got to observe in. What else was on there? Some strategies. So student strategies that they've observed. And they had to talk about, all right, what are some great things that your teachers are doing and where is some room for improvement? So there were a lot of like questions and answer pieces in it for their tasks. It's kind of fun. But I found that it takes so long, so I'm trying to find like the perfect template to just continue to reuse, because I find it takes hours to put together.
It does. Even I'll say like I've been using it for quite a while, and I feel like mine, I take the longest in just trying to like make sure, all right, like does this fit in here? What do I really want them to get from it, right? Like we go back and forth. It's almost like that lesson planning, but like it's also, I feel the struggle becomes like how much information do I give them and how much I don't, and then like, how much do I allow them to like have control over it versus like what I'm giving them or what I'm feeding them, but really allowing them that space to like share their thoughts and share what they're thinking. But you're right, it takes it takes a lot of time. I would say that like I still, I don't know. And then I like variety. So even like while I'm worried about the kids and not making sure that I'm not doing the same one over and over again, at the same time, I'm like, well, I like to do, you know, even the kids would be like, we're doing it on here now. And I'm like, yeah, let's try it out. Like, let's see how this works. Let's, you know, let's do something different. And then they'll end up saying like, oh, okay, this is a good idea. This is a good idea. I'm like, okay, good. But it does. It takes hours. Like even during the institutes when I'm like there and I'm like the only one who will do a hyperdoc. And then you have to present your lesson too on the last day that we have a hub session where we're like presenting. And every time I get up to like demonstrate what I'm doing, like people are always like, oh my God, you did this just this week, like all the information. And then they're like, how do you know about this? And how did you like know about this platform? And what is that, you know? So then, but then we have to like go, I'm like, well, you're just gonna have to email me because we have to like get to the next person to present. But then people are always like, I never even thought about that. So that's always cool. But, you know, when in that week time, I'm like in my room trying to figure this all out and figure it all out.
The one modification I made, I'm actually still working on it. I got an email the other day and it was like, Ms. EDO, can you please just give me like a step-by-step? She's like, I can get it done if you give me a step-by-step. And then in my head, I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, it's kind of in step-by-step already. So then I added numbers. And I'm like, okay, if I just add a number next to engage or task, you know, maybe she'll be able to follow it better if it's that way. So I haven't updated it yet, but I'm like, all right, well, maybe she needs the numbers.
So is that like, is she saying in terms so that way she can complete it or so that way she can create one?
In completion, just to follow, because there's so many links in each box, you know, there's just a lot of things to go to, and maybe it's information overload if you're jumping from one document, but then I want you to respond in the Padlet and then we're going to go here, you know. So maybe if I baby step it even more and have like 1 and then A, B, C, D, you know, 2.
Okay.
I'm going to try it out and see how it works.
To see if that helps her, yeah, because then,
Yep. She was like, I can do it if you could just give me the step-by-step. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, but it's already.
I feel like, just go in order. So what grade level do you work with?
9 through 12.
Okay.
High school. So I have like the range of students.
And I think too, like I was saying earlier, like for a lot of our students, this is a different way of thinking, right? This is a different way of receiving information. And I always found it fascinating in 5th grade where my students were like, can't you just tell us? And I'm like, no, I can't just tell you because then you don't learn anything from that. And then over time, then they started like, oh my God, this is so cool. Or if I say, all right, our next, you know, unit will be on X, Y, and Z. Oh, are you gonna have Hyperdocs too? Are we gonna do, or we'll do like the multimedia sets, right? Tech sets. And they started to love it. But in the beginning, I felt like between them and the parents, I actually had pushback from parents too, that were like, they're telling me they're doing this like hyper thing. Like, what is that? Why are you not up there telling them stuff? To where I had to like defend the parents, like, just trust the process, please. Like, it's not about me standing up and giving them all the information. It really is about like them learning and then, you know, drawing conclusions based on evidence. Like these are life skills that they're going to need as they get older. And then finally parents would say, well, that's not how I learned. And it's like, yeah, that's not how I learned either. But like, here we are. and they're going to be better for it. Like they'll be able to like explain to you what they're learning. Now they'll be able to like really talk about it because they're not sitting and receiving, they're actually like engaging and participating, and they have parts that they have more parts to do as opposed to not. So, but yeah, I found like between my students and my parents for the first, I would say like 2 months, there's like this pushback. Like, why can't you just, even even if they have questions, you know, like we'll take a look at the questions that they've come up with. And then I'll say, all right, so as we go through, you know, however long we're going to be working on this, then I'll be finding those primary sources to help you come up with the answer. And they're like, help me come up with the answer. How come you just can't tell us what the answer is? And I would have some students who would say like, it's probably because you just don't know. And I'm like, I know, Leroy. Like, but it's just like, if I tell you, you're not going to remember, you know, and I'm like, it's going to be more fun if you get to like, you know, go through, it's like, and so finally kids started to say like, it's almost like you're giving us clues along the way and we have to like solve this big mystery. And I'm like, exactly, just go with it. But yeah, the first 2 months are usually like, I can't you, how come you just won't tell us? Why are you making it, you know, why do you, and I was I need to know what you're thinking in your head. And that was new too. I think that was different for a lot of them. Any other questions or thoughts?
Have you found good primary sources for Native Americans? You know, that's one area where I think I'm fifth grade as well.
Oh, okay.
And Hyperdoc would be really helpful to get some good material in their hands aside from our textbook, which is so whitewashed,
Right.
that I would really like better, you know, resource. That's where Hyperdocs, I think, really would glow, would be the social studies for this purpose, which is the point in your presentation, I think.
So I'm trying to think right off because so that's the other thing too. So there are and there's not a lot, right? For obvious reasons, because like they got rid of them. But then I found that the most helpful is oh my God, what is, I just went blank. Williamsburg, like their website, they have a lot because they like even there they like highlight those. So I found, and I should have put that here. Williamsburg definitely has quite a bit. I'm looking for the link right now.
I found some good video on PBS, but unfortunately it goes into history that's too ugly. Like, thankfully it's truthful, but you know, there's certain topics you don't bring up. So I'm thinking of screencasting out certain segments. And so I get the primary voice of the tribal spokespeople without necessarily the parts that are a little too dark for.
Right. So I put, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. So I put the Colonial Williamsburg one in there. And then also check out, because I think we actually did a lesson with them. The Virginia, I think it's the virginiahistory.org. I'm going to put that in the chat as well. I found that a lot of state history, like state historical like societies and museums, they actually have a lot of primary sources now. They're actually starting to reach out to teachers and that they have a lot of primary sources because they'll talk about the Native American tribes that were in their area, and they've like almost done their due diligence to like find that information and share it. Some of them have it where I know I think it was the Virginia history one where they actually have kits that have like actual primary sources that the kids can like touch and engage with, that like they'll send to you, and then they'll have you like send, you have to like pay for shipping to ship it back to them. So like check those two. And then definitely like look up other state ones. They have a lot that they're doing. And then I know I would have to go through my email, but I can send you some later too, that like, I know that we've done a lot of Skypes with some of these programs. Like William
cool.
Williamsburg will do like a Skype with your class and do like this whole lesson with him. And what they'll do is they'll send you the primary sources and then they do the lesson while on Skype.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that up.
I mean, and they'll even do it now that you're virtual. They'll like come into your, like you can either join their Zoom or they'll join your Zoom or your Google Meet. And then they'll make sure to like send you the primary sources and the documents, like, you know, they'll use whatever platform. So sometimes they'll send it to you as a PDF and then you can just use Google. Like, I don't know if you guys have Cami or if you use Seesaw, whatever tool, they'll like, you can like send it to the kids and they can annotate with them and engage with them, but they'll do it even virtually. Like Monticello does that as well, and Mount Vernon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
so,
amazing.
Yeah, Monticello, Mount Vernon, and they'll even like, while they have like set topics that they'll do with you or for your students, they'll take suggestions as well. So if you're looking for something in particular, then they'll get that ready. They're really open and they're really pushing. They jumped in right away. Like once we had to go virtual, they're really on top of like wanting to get into the virtual spaces now and like share that information, and they'll like get the resources to you. That way you, whatever platform you communicate with your students, they'll have it there. And they do a good job of like keeping them engaged, and you can choose anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
I totally want to do that. That's one of the, blessings, I guess, of this situation is places can go beyond their borders for field trips.
Yeah. Even in national parks, they'll come in into your virtual space and do lessons with the students as well. And they'll actually have like the primary sources with them, like the actual pieces, and then they'll also send you like PDFs of things so that we can check it out that way.
Nice.
Yep. Right. So it is 1 o'clock. I'm supposed to make Kristen back.
All right. Well, hey, I really want to thank everyone for joining us today for our EdCamp session here with Leticia Citizen. Do know this session has been recorded and it will be uploaded on our EdCamp site and made available. Right now, we're actually going to be going into our lunch break, so to speak, from 1 till 1:30 Pacific time, and we'll be coming back together then. So I do look forward to continuing our day of learning together, and hope you have a great lunch. Thank you so much, Leticia. If you would please release host privileges back to Kristen, and we'll be all set to go.
I did. I went
Bye,
on.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.